They don't differ in this dimension of working memory. However, their abilities and what they're able to perform substantially differ from one another. If you're talking about somebody being an art prodigy, or somebody being a musical prodigy, or somebody being a mathematical prodigy, or it's because, and when they looked at the IQs of these individuals, these things varied. You had an IQ of 108 to the highest IQ of being 147. So even IQ is not something that's homogeneous amongst child prodigies, and yet you have exceptional ability given their domain. And it seems that the only thing that really explains this exceptional ability is, again, specialization, primarily through deliberate practice. And I said before that I'm looking for a trait that doesn't seem to be able to be augmented by deliberate practice, and it seems that deliberate practice, it has shelf life. I'm not a neuroplastician, or the plasticianers, as I call them, that believe everything is plastic, because things that are embodied, such as height, there's not much plasticity to height. There seems to be a great deal of retardation you can do to somebody's height given malnourishment or a severe illness. Same thing can be said about IQ. IQ has its greatest plasticity, it seems, from the ages of early infancy to just about 20. It ranges, but I'll just say it looks, for most people, around 40 is when fluid intelligence stops being malleable, and whatever changes that one achieved in their levels of fluid intelligence taper off, and the actual innate genetic factor of IQ stagnates and is what exists over time. So so not everything is completely plastic, and there is limits to how much something can change over time. You can see it in people's abilities to learn language later on in life. They have a considerable amount of more difficulty in doing it than a child does. And why this is salient, and why I'm mentioning this now after mentioning the personality disorders, is because in working memory and the prodigies, is because you have a schematization of the mind when you're looking at the child prodigy and their working memory, and it greatly links with having the autistic spectrums disorder. And if they don't have it themselves, they're directly related to somebody who deals with autism. And it's this correlation, or this connection between autism, working memory, attention to detail, and low distractibility is what seems to give these prodigies the frameworks, at least for them to go out and pursue the skill and really harness it and achieve exceptional abilities. I say that this constitutes, for me, it is not only the biological embodied traits, but also the psychoschematic factors of an individual. You can say personality, but I don't even think it comes down specifically to personality, because it seems that if somebody is schizotypy, it's not just autism. It seems if somebody suffers with autism, if somebody suffers with ADHD, if somebody suffers with schizotypy, which is it's an offshoot of schizophrenia, roughly, or low latent inhibition, they have a cognitive makeup that is mapped on top of their personality. It seems like same thing with IQ and being a highly creative individual. It seems like these are cognitive schematizations of the mind that get mapped on top of a personality, and that somewhat drive an individual to having high results of achievement in any given field. Well, in certain specific domains of knowledge, because if you go into the field of mathematics, me being a mathematician and a physicist, and you have a low level of distractibility, you have the predilection to pay attention to details more so than another person, and you have an enormous capacity for working memory, you're going to be exceptionally well, or at least your professors and your teachers are going to recognize that you have some sort of exceptional talent, because um, those factors are just substantial in the need in those communities and in computational ability, and to be able to deal with formula and symbols, and to really perfect mathematical knowledge. Those are requirements. It's actually something that I don't. I have a high amount of working memory, and I'm not autistic, so I just have a high amount of working memory, and I noticed that in my ability to recall bits and facts of data, and to literally learn something in class and use it in a tutoring session 2 days later, teaching the same thing I just learned to somebody else, and not really studying it after that. Not really studying it after that. But that's working. Is just working memory roughly. But I have a high level of distractibility. It's because I have ADHD. But it's to say it's ADHD and low latent inhibition. They permit me to make quite a bit of one, just my cognitive speed, and my ability to process information is fast. It frightens my teachers sometimes, and my ability to create random associations and to be able to connect ideas to things that just aren't readily apparent. I don't share my absurd ideas on YouTube, but man, I can come up with some very strange and absurd associations. And I know it's because of low latent inhibition and the things that get collected in my subconscious or even my conscious mind that stick and stay there. It's not normal. I'll just say that. At least normal insofar as it doesn't fit what the mean sort of statistics are for people's level of latent inhibition, and I know I have ADHD, and I know what my IQ score is, and I know what my working memory scores are. So it's just to say this, that when you look at exceptional ability and high performance, yeah, there are innate factors, but those innate factors seem to be things that are embodied biological traits, factors of personality, things of persistence, and just really psychological schematization. What the neurophonology of somebody who's schizotypy, it looks a lot like somebody who's schizophrenic, and it looks a lot like somebody who's highly creative, and they seem to just, that's, they're born that way. Somebody who has ADHD, I don't remember my neurophonology for ADHD that well, but I know it too has some rather interesting components to it. And same thing with dyslexia. People who seem to suffer from dyslexia have very powerful visual spatial abilities, which lead them to do exceptionally well in areas like geometry and certain branches of mathematics. And it's just to say that, you know, there are definitely things that are biological in nature and that are genetically determined that do play out in how somebody, what potential someone has in being able to perform a certain way. But it seems that factors such as home environment and being exposed to things over time and having a familiarity with something is a good predictor. Siblings being involved in the same things is a strong predictor. Motivation, the ability to persist at something, the willingness to practice, there just seems to be so many factors that lead to practice and that lead to the expression of something that is not contained within the genetic and the biological factors and of themselves, that say more about why an individual will have the performance they have. And for those reasons that I just say it's like most things, it's complicated and it's an amalgamation. You have the need for deliberate practice. You have a sort of personality a psychoschematization of the person as well. It's not to say normal or average people can't be exceptional performers, but just when you get tremendous levels of creativity, it seems to be this somewhat of a nexus point between multiple factors or just seminal breakthroughs. It seems to be the same thing. And innate talents, they're definitely real things. They just may not be what most people readily accept and conceive them to be. So that's my video, and hopefully you have garnered some useful information from this. And if you have any thoughts, comments, rebuttals, critiques, concerns, feel free to leave them, because I like reading them and going and doing more research. So thank you.